Welcome back to the Gardening with Joey and Holly radio show. Final show of Season 9. Happy to have you back. Want more information about those coupon codes? Find them all at our parent website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, under the Money tab for coupon codes, which are valid through the end of the calendar year. And Season 9 radio tab. Well, raised beds, people may choose to grow in raised beds for a number of reasons. And those reasons are valid to those individuals. However, building raised beds...
Let's talk about why you might build a raised bed. One, maybe you don't have the best soil, you don't know how your soil is, and you just want to build in raised beds. You want to invest in the process. And...
You are not able to dig where you're at for toxified soil, a lot of utilities under the ground. You don't want to, you rent.
Have like something, you rent. You might have something where you have black walnut trees.
Yeah.
Things like that, or accessibility. It might be easier for you to build like a higher upraised bed to garden,
like 24 or 36 inches, and then fill it with the bottom with logs and stuff, and then put soil in the top 12, 16 inches. So there's many different tools in which you can utilize to build your raised beds. You can go and purchase lumber and use pressure treated 2x10s or 2x12s. You can use pine untreated lumber and coat it with Timber Pro Coatings USA internal wood stabilizer. You can buy prefab raised beds like you might get from different companies online.
Sometimes
OneSweetEarth.com, they have prefab 2 foot by 4 foot or 4 foot by 4 foot made in the USA raised beds.
Right. And sometimes you'll even see them on the side of the road where somebody has a little sign that says raised beds. I've seen them on Facebook Marketplace, stuff like that, where somebody's making these raised beds.
Oh, you mean like you can buy them?
Yeah.
They're construction, and then you just go pick them up and slide them in the back on a trailer or something.
Right.
Okay.
You can even find, fun pop-up ones online as well. So those are some options for you. What you want to think about before you put your raised bed in?
Well, first, people may think pressure treated, nasty, bad.
Yeah.
It used to be pressure treated with arsenic. Then it went to copper in the early 2000s, and even studies today have shown that there is almost virtually no leakage or seepage of chemical from board to soil. And in today's modern pressure treated lumber, copper, which is an element of all life, it's not nearly as bad as the arsenic that was used in years gone by.
Right. So you want to think about the width of the raised bed. Now, you typically don't want to do more than 4 feet for the width. So you could do 3 or 4 feet for the width.
Why is that?
You want to be able to reach across it. So not that you can't reach across all 4 feet unless maybe you have some very long arms. You want to be able to reach across to get to the middle at least.
You're not compressing, you're not putting your hands down or kneeling in the bed compressing that soil.
So if you think I need this to be 3 feet wide, make it 3 feet wide, because maybe you have some mobility, maybe you are short, whatever it may be. I'm short, I get it, so maybe 3 feet is what you need, or maybe you have little helpers helping you, and 3 feet would be easier for them.
Now, in all the raised beds that we have built, we have brought in, popped up, filled with compost, raised bed mix. Over time, it does get dense.
Yes.
And you do have to, I don't know these individuals, on TV you see, what they are doing is every year they're bringing in another 2 or 3 inches of compost and putting on top, and over the course of the year, watering and earthworms and microbes are pulling that nutrients and that compost down, which is breaking up the soil so it doesn't have the time in order to dense up. You and I and those of you who are listening, we may not be able to have the financial ability to bring in 2 or 3 cubic yards of compost every year at a cost of $100+ and delivery in order to top our raised beds off. So minimum amount of soil disturbance is up to the discretion of the gardener, whether you decide to go in there with a tiller or loosen it up with a broad fork or a garden fork to get some air in there to aerate that soil. That's up to you. But in our experience, there is a density factor that does occur over several years.
Absolutely. So yeah, you want to think about the compost, etc., the density factor. So before you place your raised beds, you want to think about the sunlight. Where is the sun hitting? And this is a good time to think about this because there's probably still leaves on your trees, maybe not, but you can also kind of get an idea just by looking up and seeing, what's going to be shaded, what's not. Do I have a south side of the house that I can put this on? Do I have, north side of the home area is not the best, but you might get some east and west sunlight.
Look up because you're going at the time of the sun. Or the time of the midsummer, you're going to have long days and you're going to have shade coverage. Now, say shade coverage at a minimum of an hour or 2 or 3 based on where the tree is or the neighbor's tree, not detrimental to the plants in which you're growing. However, if you've got building on the west side and you've got a building on the east side and a tree above and the sun's only getting to your garden between 11 and 10:30 and 12 and 2 and 3, you're not going to have very much success. You're going to have to figure out a possibility of a community garden or doing something different in order to get that available sunlight that is needed for these plants to produce correctly.
I really think that this might be the first step in building a raised bed, is thinking about where the heck you're going to put this thing, because if it's not a viable option to put it somewhere, then you have to figure out another plan.
Well, we've had guests on this program where they had talked about moving to another house, and the first thing they looked at was, how does the sun lay in the backyard, and is it going to be good for gardening? If it's not, we weren't going to move there.
Right, and I think that's a totally valid thing, and I would not be surprised if people made that decision. Even people who have built houses want to know, where they're going to put. They have a plan for whether it be gardens or
pools, spas, patios, saunas.
Something that, or even like a little pond. This is stuff that's important, especially if you're trying to have a home that you want to stay in for a while. Forever home. Moving is not fun, so it makes sense.
But you find a lot of things you didn't know you had.
Right. Like you just found a bushel earlier.
A bushel basket, yeah.
We're not moving.
No, but I was looking for something else and found it, and that'll work good for another project that I got.
Right. So anyway, so there's lots of things to consider when you are building a raised bed. Another thing would be to think about how much are you going to grow. So, and also if you are planning on moving at some point, whether it not be next year or something like that, but within the next few years, maybe you're transitioning in life where maybe your kids might be moving out. Yeah, you're downsizing, or the opposite, you're growing a family. You might want to consider that as well. Or you might think, okay, I promised my kids when they were 7, 5, and 10 that we could get a puppy. Not that the puppy is necessarily going to dig in the raised beds, but you don't know. It will. So, like, just stuff like that, that there could be some sort of life change, adjustment, what have you, and to keep that in mind. The good thing about building raised beds and having them is if you have, a couple of years where you're not as prolifically gardening, they're still going to be there. Right.
And with the raised beds, with all of this here, it's an investment. You're going to invest in either prefab raised beds, boards that you're going to bring in and build your own raised beds, irrigation system, because if you're going to do this, let's do it right the first time. That old adage, buy once, cry once, and have it forever.
Yeah.
An irrigation system. If you're going to do a raised bed, drip irrigation, you got to put that in. That's one goes with the other. There's no sense of trying to grow plants in a nice, fluffy soil raised bed if you're not even going to, if you don't have a consistent water to it.
Right, and the irrigation is very, very important, and I agree. It's something that makes a huge difference when it comes to watering your plants. Another thing to keep in mind is mulch. You want to make sure that you are able to mulch, and right now you want to collect as many leaves as you can because that's free mulch, free compost, etc. So that's something that if you currently have raised beds, you want to make sure you are putting that, or anywhere on your garden, do that as well. If you are, maybe you're new to gardening and you don't want to commit to a whole raised bed situation, you can grow in containers, 5-gallon buckets, straw bale method. There's options to get a feel for that before you...
Even a 4x4 area in the backyard, take us and spade it up.
Right. So there's that as well. Or the opposite, if you're like, I think I want raised beds, but this sounds like a commitment. Maybe I'm going to get a soil test instead and see if I can grow my soil.
Soil test from mysoilsavvy.com. You purchase the item, it's sent to your residence, you follow the instructions, you send it back to their lab, and they will email you 16 points of analysis of what's good, what's bad, how to fix it, what to stop doing, what to do in order to get your soil. Because you can look at soil. You can look at plants growing in soil and go, something is off. That plant should be much greener than what it is. Or that plant is purple and that plant should not be. There's issues with it. Now, you can't determine, okay, that pH is XXX or whatever it is. It's 8.9 or whatever. You don't know all that. You don't know how much nitrogen's in the soil or lack thereof, or phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, sulfate. Also, you don't know.
There's these things where it's like, take a cup of soil and add a tablespoon of vinegar, and if it bubbles up, it means your soil is acidic or whatever. There may be truth to that. Yes,
but if we're going to do it, let's do it right. Let's do it once. It's like buying... tools for the garden. Yes, you can go to the dollar store and buy an El Cheapo that will make you about 2 weeks in the garden. You got to buy again. Or you can go buy a $80 or $90 top of the line hand forged tool that will never break, and you can use it for home defense, and you never have to worry about it. It'll pass down. It's like cast iron skillets. They'll never never break. It's what do you want to do? Add up the time and money in which you fight with the cheap stuff, and in 4 or 5 years you could have bought the really nice thing and been money ahead and been done with it.
Well, absolutely, and there's a lot of truth to that for a lot of
outside garden stuff, non-garden stuff,
non-garden stuff, etc. One thing I think to keep in mind also is, I know it's important to keep in mind, is how much space between the raised beds. So if you maybe use a riding lawnmower.
Yeah, minimum
3 feet.
Preferably 4.
Yeah, 4. But maybe you use a riding lawnmower and you know that you have to be able to get around that. You don't want to have to buy another lawnmower.
Well, and that's the thing.
Because of the raised bed.
With the gardens at your mom's house, that was something that, the width from bed to bed, we had that figured out. What we didn't figure out and what we failed to do, which it is able to work, is the distance from the property line to the edge of the bed.
Yeah.
It is just marginally enough to get that push lawnmower between the property line. We didn't think about, we need X amount more inches on this side so we can get turned into between the beds in order to cut the grass. That arching, that turning, that pushing that lawnmower so you don't have to lift it up, turn it off, lift it up, and get it in between the beds. That's a pain.
Right. So these are very important things to think about, and just how it's going to fit into what you already have. You don't want to have to buy something new or trade or something like that, because that's obviously very frustrating. Don't create more problems for yourself when you're trying to find a solution for yourself. Joey, summer's winding down, but just because it's fall, we don't want to forget about our yards and those Japanese beetles and other grubs. They may now be hidden, but they're not far. Not only did the beetles feast on your roses and berries this summer, they laid eggs in your turf so that they can invade your yard again next year. Fight back with Phylum's Grub Gone. Grub Gone is a non-chemical BT granule that applied to lawns and specifically targets scarab pests and their larvae with an 80% plus control even in the fall.
Holly, did you know that Grub Gone is the only non-chemical choice that effectively controls grubs, and when you combine it with the best chemical grub control at very low amounts, BioAdvanced grub control products, the tough-to-kill fall season grubs, are hit with a 1-2 punch that kills them at the best rate tested, nearly 100%. This combo of the best of biology and chemistry is called IPM, Integrated Pest Management, which is the best industry practice. Mix 1.25 pounds of each per 1,000 square feet equals 100% control. Grub Gone from Phylum Bioproducts, the best combination of safety and performance.